Thank you for that wonderful talk, Swamiji. Now the floor is open to questions.
Swamiji, thank you for your wonderful lecture. Swamiji, our body and mind are finite in sense. And how do we manifest our infinite energy or infinite potential within us with the constraint with our body and mind?
Yes, so how to manifest the infinite energy and potential that is within us. Swami Vivekananda famously said, each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within. Do this by work or worship, by philosophy or psychic control, by one or more or all of these, and be free. That's the whole of religion, he said. So how to do that? How to manifest this potential divinity? And as one Swami used to say, he would say, contradicting Swamiji. Not that Swamiji didn't know this, but he liked to just to show his boldness, and I'm contradicting even Swami Vivekananda. He would say it's not potential divinity, it's actual divinity. And so of course Swamiji knew that and said it himself. But he meant potential in the sense of potential in our experience. So how to do that? One thing is, there are two main things to do. And these are general things to do. One is to clarify the mind, to work at disciplining the mind so that the mind becomes a good instrument. That can be done through meditation, prayer, worship, or it can be done through more objective, more scientific, non-religious ways also. But to make the mind clear. The traditional illustration is given that when you have a lake, a perfectly still lake gives a reflection of everything around it, a perfect reflection. But when the lake is in waves, you don't get a reflection, a clear reflection. And so when the mind is clear, then the reflection of reality is strong. And then the inner reality will manifest. The other thing is connected, and that is purification of the heart. The heart and mind are not really different. But the heart, you could say, is the higher mind, the buddhi. But we make a distinction between the heart and mind in that, and it's a useful distinction, in that the mind means the perceiving the instrument. And so strengthening that, clarifying that. And the heart means the realm of love, compassion, of unselfishness, and so forth. And so by becoming more unselfish, becoming more good-hearted, loving, compassionate, etc., then the heart becomes purified. And so when the heart is purified and when the mind is clarified, then the potential within us is free to express itself. So those, in general terms, those are the two main things to do.
Pranam Swamiji.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yes.
When we perceive this world, and when we perceive so many events happening in this world, it's through the mind that we perceive it. So the mind is there to register those events, and when we recollect those events, it's again through the mind, the thoughts that help us recollect those events. Now coming to one point which you said during your speech, you said we remember the sleepless, the dreamless sleep, the peaceful state during the dreamless sleep that we had. But in that state, we really didn't have a mind. The mind was not existent. So I don't understand how we can recollect that state of peace when the mind was actually absent, because there were no thoughts at that point. So how do we recollect it?
Yes, that's a very good question, and a profound question. That's a very, very good. So the idea, when you wake up from sleep, what you have are not memories. Because as you say, to have a memory, there has to be the action of mind. And so when we wake up, we only remember that I didn't know anything. We don't even remember, like I said, when I fell and went unconscious, at that time, because probably some of the mind was still active when I fell unconscious as a kid, I had a clear perception of the complete absence of everything. But it was an actual perception. The body was gone, the thoughts were gone, but I saw the absence of everything. And I knew that I still existed. I was a 12-year-old kid, and I had no philosophical training or anything, so I didn't know what it meant. And so I was mystified by it. I thought, my God, so that's what unconsciousness means. I am, but the body and mind are gone. But there must have been some part of the mind. So in deep sleep, when we remember deep sleep, we don't even remember that. We don't remember, I can still remember that state where I saw the absence of everything. The mind was completely still. But in deep sleep, where even that function of mind is stilled, we just have the pure memory, and it's just lodged in consciousness. And even there must be a small, a subtle remainder of the mind at that time also, even for that experience to remain. But it's such a subtle vibration of mind and such a still vibration of mind that it's hardly nameable as mind. But even there, it must be there, because if somebody calls us in deep sleep, we wake up. So there has to be some thread to connect us to the other states of mind. But again, it's so subtle and so still that it's practically non-existent. So a very good question. I've never been asked that one before. Yes.
I've been listening to you since yesterday. It was really nice. Thanks for that.
Yes, thank you.
In today's talk, in one place you mentioned about bhakti and jnana yoga. So, like, I'm not sure if I've understood you correctly. You said, like, even in bhakti, you need to, like, have a bit of jnana.
Yes.
So, but, like, aren't they two parallel things? I mean, like, meeting at some point. So, like, the very idea of bhakti is, like, not to have this jnana in it, right?
No, the idea of bhakti is not to not have jnana. But your question is good, and let me expand on what I said, because again, there was all of each one of the ideas I gave tonight. I could have turned each one of them into a lecture, and so I had to give them in condensed form. And by condensing them, sometimes damage is done to the idea itself. And this is a good example. And your question is very good. I'm glad you asked it, because it gives me a chance to clarify the idea. Sri Ramanujacharya, the great philosopher of Vishishtadvaita, he said that in the path of Bhakti Yoga, the main path of Bhakti Yoga as he taught it, he said first you do karma in order to purify the mind, and then you do jnana in order to find out who I am. But for him, jnana meant just knowing myself as the jiva, the individual soul. And then Bhakti Yoga is relating that to God. And Ramanuja also said that what is bhakti? He said bhakti is a jnana vishesha. It's a special type of knowledge. So in Ramanuja's philosophy, knowledge and bhakti are not contrary to each other. Now, he didn't accept advaita, non-dualism. So that he contradicted. But jnana he didn't contradict. He said that bhakti itself is a special type of knowledge. But he didn't mean that everybody had to follow jnana yoga before following bhakti. He said that was the sort of the straight path for those who were qualified for it. But he said that there's another path for those that anyone can follow, and that is the path of prapatti, the path of surrender to God. And there you don't worry about any of these things. You don't worry about karma yoga for purification. You don't worry about jnana yoga for self-knowledge. You don't even worry about bhakti yoga as a science. You just surrender yourself to God and say, God, I am yours. Oh Lord, I am yours. Do with me what you will. I'm in your hands. I give myself to you, and I give all worry for myself to you. All fruits of my actions, my desires, everything I give to you. You do with me what you will. And he said that is the easy path. So again, when I said that Ramanuja taught that jnana yoga comes before bhakti yoga, that was for the sort of the straight and narrow path that he taught for what he considered adhikaris, those who were fit for the strong path of bhakti.
Thanks, Swamiji.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Oh, way back there. Okay. Hi. Good evening.
Sir, you said that we just have to witness here, whatever is happening here. And we feel a good feeling, like we feel bliss when we do this, and our mind is just zero. We don't have any thoughts, and we are just experiencing what is we are sakshi of whatever is happening. But since we have this body, and this body is an operator from which change can be brought into the lives of other people for a general good. And I have utter respect for Swami Vivekananda, but I have this paradox that he lived through that time wherein Britishers were exploiting their resources of India and the peoples of India. So rather, like, his motive was to build character, like to engage in, to inculcate in people the character that was lost by the British, since they were imbibing in the people this Western education, and so that this Indian people can be uprooted from their culture, so their characters could be lost. So his aim was to build in character so that everyone could do whatever he wants. But I think that he should have been a revolutionary like Bhagat Singh and peoples of HSRA, Hindustan Socialist Republic Association. He should have been a leader himself. And since he said that youth should engage in fearless action, so he should have demonstrated this with himself acting as a leader and just doing what Bhagat Singh, because people like Bhagat Singh, they were unselfish, and unselfishness is God. So he was unselfish, there is no doubt about that. But I somewhere feel that he was crazy about knowledge. Like you said, na, that Vedanta, he wanted to know truth. So he thought that truth was in Vedanta. So if he would have thought that truth was somewhere else, he would have left Vedanta and would have just gone there. So I think that he was crazy for knowledge and truth, but he should have led the movement. He should have led the movement through action, by action.
Well, that was believed by his own brother. His younger brother, he had two brothers, Mahendranath Datta and Bhupendranath Datta. Bhupendranath was a revolutionary, and he was one of the early Marxists in India. And he himself said that Sri Ramakrishna had ruined Swami Vivekananda by turning him towards spirituality, and that had it not been for Sri Ramakrishna, Swamiji would have been a great revolutionary leader. Now, I don't think that Swamiji even then had, of course, to think of Swami Vivekananda without Sri Ramakrishna, first of all, they wouldn't even have been a Swami Vivekananda in one sense without a Sri Ramakrishna. But even if we say Narendranath Dutt had still been born and never met Sri Ramakrishna, I still don't think he would have become a revolutionary leader in that sense. He was revolutionary. He was a leader. And this is my opinion. I'm not trying to convince you, but just giving my answer to your query, an honest query, and I appreciate your query. And again, I give it respect by saying that Swamiji's own brother believed the same thing. But I would say one thing is that look at Swami Vivekananda now and his influence in the world, and look at Bhagat Singh. No criticism of Bhagat Singh. He was a great man, and he made a great sacrifice for the country. But look at what he did, and look at what Swami Vivekananda did. Bhagat Singh's sacrifice was great, and it was for the country. Swami Vivekananda also sacrificed his life for the country and for the whole world, not just for India. And Swami Vivekananda, I can project, I can predict that 1,000 years from now, people all over the world will still be studying Swami Vivekananda and getting inspiration from him, whereas Bhagat Singh will be a footnote in history. Again, that's not a criticism of him. I won't even be a footnote in history. Nobody will remember me at all. When I'm gone, even the day after I'm gone, I won't be a footnote in history. Bhagat Singh may be a footnote in history, but Swami Vivekananda will still be a leader, looked to by people all over the world as a leader and as someone who has inspired them. Even now, there are hundreds of thousands and probably actually millions of people throughout the world who are deeply influenced by Swami Vivekananda. And he did that by sacrificing his life. And he also knew that he could be a revolutionary leader. He knew that he had the power. When he was docked here outside of Chennai, the boat that he got in the Bay of Bengal, coming down the Ganges from Calcutta, got on the boat. and was supposed to dock here in Chennai, but it wouldn't let the boat dock in Chennai. The British said that there was malaria or something, I forget, plague on the boat, and that also was probably an excuse. And they wanted to keep Swami Vivekananda from the people, and Swamiji said on the boat, let them kill me, then you'll see that India will rise up. And so he was ready at that time to give his life in sacrifice, and knew that if he did that India would rise up. But instead of that, he gave his life in a bigger sacrifice that eventually led to the awakening of India. Many people credit Swami Vivekananda with the awakening of India, the awakening of the freedom movement. And not only India, but the awakening of the world, and the awakening of the world to the greatness of India. And so I would say, and again, everyone is welcome to their own judgments and opinions, but I would say that Swami Vivekananda's sacrifice was the greatest sacrifice. He held back from sacrificing his life for a temporary goal of freeing India, for the much larger goal of the next 1,000 or 1,500 years of India's development. Any other questions? Yes.
Namaste, Swami.
Namaste.
I have a doubt. How to reduce or eliminate duality of personality? On the one side, there is the hedonistic approach or ambition, things like that. On the other side, practice of love, be good to people, and try to be simple living. So how to kind of deal with this duality?
Yes, that's a very good question also. Because everybody in the modern world, except if there are any people that are still born on lotuses, but the rest of us who are not born on lotuses, everybody is pushed in two directions. Or most people are pushed in one direction, that is just towards enjoyment and everything. That's very easy because that's what the world says you should do, and that's the direction most people go. Those of us who want something more than just, we find that physical enjoyment is not enough of a life for us. We want something more. Then we find, all of us find, that we're pulled in those two directions. And so it's a very good question, and one that pertains to anybody who has any higher ideal in life. Again, not just for sannyasis or people who renounce the world, but for anybody who wants to have a higher life, living in the world. So the general advice that I would give, and in a situation like this, all I can give is general advice, of course. One thing is, as Sri Ramakrishna said, if you go towards the west, you're automatically leaving the east. And so what that means in this situation is, if I think in terms of, okay, how do I get rid of my hedonistic desires, you find that that's not going to work. You find, okay, I'm not going to have hedonistic desires, and then suddenly all sorts of things arise in the mind. And it gets even stronger as soon as you say you're not going to do it. So what do? You move in the direction, that is, you think in terms, thank you, you think in terms of how do I increase my other interests, my interest in idealism, my interest in service to others, my interest in unselfishness and purifying my heart, loving other beings, and reaching for something higher. Increase that, and don't worry about the former so much. If you increase the one, the other will begin to recede. It will take time. It takes time. Be patient. Be patient. Don't worry. One of the things we have to learn, especially in modern life, at all times it's been a problem, but especially in modern life we have to learn, and that is how to sustain a contradiction in our life. That is, I want to go in this direction, but everything's pushing me in that direction. That's going to be there for some time. You can get over it, but it takes time. So be strong enough inside to just sustain the fact that I want to go in this direction, but everything's pushing me that way. And if you do what you can to move in this direction without worrying about the other direction so much, you'll find that gradually the other direction is weakening, little by little, and this is strengthening. But again, as soon as you say, okay, I'm not going to go in that direction, then you find that everything inside of you is pushing you in that direction. So a direct frontal assault doesn't work well. An indirect method works far better. And you'll find that as you grow as you move in that direction with what enthusiasm you can and so forth, you don't have to force anything, just do it in a natural way, go in that direction. You'll find that you find gradually more joy in that. And then you find that this, my goodness, somehow I thought that this was joyful, now I find that that's insipid. I'm not even interested in that anymore. I want to go in that direction. So that in general is the way to go.
Swamiji,
Yes.
I would like to hear your reflections on higher purpose, ideals, consciousness, etc., in the light of evolutionary biology, where organisms evolve.
Yes. Now that, I have to say that I'm not an expert in evolutionary biology, so I can't pretend to address that question very well. But let me just say this, and this is a very simple idea, nothing profound. But at the level of biology, at the human level, evolution doesn't seem to be progressing much beyond the human level, physical evolution. But what we do find in the human life is that there's a social and consciousness evolution. There's social evolution and there's the evolution of consciousness. And so the evolutionary urge at the human level is moved to a different level, away from the physical and towards the intellectual, the social, the artistic, and the spiritual. And I would say, and it's not surprising that I would say it, being a Swami, that the spiritual is the highest of those. But the others are good as well. Swami Vivekananda said that art, science, and religion are three ways of trying to express the same thing. And he wrote a beautiful letter to one of his American friends, Mary Hale. He wrote to her and said, Mary, take up something in life. Take up art, or take up religion, or take up social service, or take up science. Take up something and give your life to it, and you'll find that your life becomes blessed. But don't just waste your life in useless interests. And so he said, take up art, or take up science, or take up social service, or take up religion, because all of those are higher purposes. The Greeks had the idea, as the Hindus had the idea. The Greeks had the idea that there are three goals of human life, three higher goals of human life: truth, goodness, and beauty. That the higher mind seeks truth, goodness, and beauty. And in India, you had the same idea expressed in Sanskrit as Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. The divine itself is of the nature of Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. That is, truth, goodness, and beauty. Exactly in the same order. And so evolution at the human level moves to an effort to express and to realize truth, goodness, and beauty. Truth can be seen as the quest of science, and it's the quest of religion. Goodness can be seen as the quest of social service, and it's the quest of religion. Sundaram can be seen as the quest of the arts, and it's the quest of religion. So all of these are connected. So take one higher value that you like and seek to evolve yourself in that way. And in that you'll be serving the higher purposes of evolution. That physical evolution, evolutionary biology has brought us up to this point, but now the evolution moves into a different direction. Yes.
Namaste Swamiji, and thank you for the wonderful talk. It was heavily laden with a lot of ideas. My question goes back to your first topic, what you spoke about, the four levels that any philosophy has to explain.
Yes.
So you spoke about the fact that there is value, and whatever was having value was real, and you would seek the one which has the highest value in terms of, or what you think is the highest value, you would seek that. But I find that in practical life, and probably in day-to-day life, there would be a lot of levels of value that you would attach to anything. I mean, every single thing, probably even though it's small, has a certain value to it. And if you're seeking only what is probably the highest, I mean, how do we account for the fact that there are there are values attached to every single thing, and how do we seek to attain a balance between all these things in daily life?
That's a very good question. And again, it's like one of the previous questions. It's something that I wasn't able to dwell on long. There's several things that I wanted to explain that there wasn't time for. And that's another thing that had I taken more time, I would have explained more fully. That what you said is very true, that there are levels of value in life. And we don't want to deny any of them if they're true values. For instance, if you have a family and you say that, well, I want to pursue the highest value, I want to seek God, and so I'm going to forget about my wife and children and leave them to their own devices, so then you'll be less of a person for doing that. You'll be shirking your responsibilities. And so in life, in spiritual life, if we take to spiritual life, one of the values of spiritual life is that eventually, in the beginning it's very confusing for everybody. When you come to spiritual life, it's very confusing because suddenly everything seems to be turned upside down. But as you get your bearings within spiritual life, you find that spiritual life actually sorts out your values and it gives the proper value to everything. And that there is a way in spiritual life to give value to everything. Sri Ramakrishna said that if you have a string of zeros, what do you have? Zero, nothing. But if you put a 1 in front of it, you have great value. All of the zeros get value. And so one of the things you find that spiritual life does is it puts the 1 in front of your life. And that 1 suddenly shows the true value of everything. Then you realize that if I have a responsibility for somebody and I abandon that responsibility, then I'm less of a person. I'm less of a person. No, that becomes part of my sacred duty. That becomes part of my religious duty. Now, yes, those who take sannyasa, those who come to monastic life, that's considered as a separate issue. So we won't go into that because most people are not going to go into monastic life. But I just mention it in passing because for monastics, the advice is different. But for anyone who is not a monastic, even for monastics, the same principle works, but it works in a different way. But for everybody, when you put the 1 in life, you suddenly find the actual value of the other things. Then your parents become sacred to you, not just I love them because they're parents, and I love them because they loved me and they brought me up. But no, it becomes a sacred relationship. Your children become sacred to you. Your partner in life becomes sacred to you. Your work becomes a sacrifice to you. That is a sacred sacrifice to you. It's through my work that I offer something back to society. I'm taking so many things from society. Nobody can only receive. Everyone has the innate wish to give back. Everyone wants to give back. That's why elderly people, you find this especially in the West. It's coming to India, unfortunately, but it hasn't come as a major problem here yet, but it's coming. In the West, it's a huge problem. That elderly people, they can't contribute things, and the family is not that close anymore, and so old people just end up sitting around with nothing to do and feeling that they're useless, feeling that they're burdens on society. No, just to give an elderly person the sense of purpose that no, just by being here, you are serving the family. You are continuing the sense of family tradition. Your being here is a value. Your wisdom, your experience of life is a value to us. Everybody has a sense of needing to give something. And so work itself, a job that you have, that becomes a field, that becomes your Kurukshetra. That becomes your karma kshetra. Not Kurukshetra in the sense of a battlefield where you got to fight, but the sense of your karma kshetra, where and your yajna kshetra, the place where you sacrifice, the place where you give back. If you're working as a bank teller, that's not a glorious job, working as a bank teller, just taking people's cash and giving them receipts and so forth. But that also is service. And if it's service, it's a yajna. And if it's a yajna, it's sacred. It's part of the sacred circle of life. Giving, you're receiving so many things, but you have to give back. Everyone has that sense of needing to give back. And so everything gets a new value. Your family relationships, your work relationships, the work itself, and everything takes on a different value. And so spiritual life eventually gives you a proper relationship to the whole of your life, where things become important for the real reason that they're important, not for the supposed or imagined reason that they're important. That takes time, but it's worth the time and effort. Yes.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Namaste.
I have a very simple question.
Good.
Swamiji had told.
That's the best type for me.
Swamiji had told that believe in yourself and believe in God, and also unselfishness is God. So, what does it exactly God mean?
A good question.
And is it God is that n number of God what each individual worship, or is it that one natural path that God's entire universe?
Yes, that's a good question. But that's not a simple question. There is when I was many years ago in San Diego Center, there was this woman who used to come to the lectures. She was from Iran, and she was a dwarf. She was only about this tall, a woman from Iran who would come, a wonderful person. I still know her, still keep up with her, Parveen Gohari. We had many Iranians who came to our Vedanta societies in America, many who became Vedantins. So she was one, but she would always come late. She would come, the lecture would be from 11 until 12 on Sunday morning, and she would come at 11:55, and invariably. One time she showed up 10 minutes early, and what happened, I was so surprised, I saw her 10 minutes early, and just amazed. I'd never seen this in years of knowing her. But then when I went in to speak, I saw she wasn't there. And then she came in the same time at 11:55. So afterwards I said, Parveen, what happened? She said that, well, Maharaj, I got here early, and I thought, well, I've got time to go get coffee. So I went to a coffee shop. So all of this is leading to the point that one time she came in at 11:55, and I said, okay, now time, I've got 5 minutes for question and answers. And so a couple of people asked questions. And I said, well, there are 30 seconds left. So one very short question. Anyone has a simple question. And she said, Swami, what is God? Oh my God. That was her idea of a simple question. And so this is your idea of a simple question. A good question. So unselfishness is God, yes. And let's see, what were the other things that you mentioned? Strength, believe in yourself, that you are the only God who exists. And then believe in God, believe in yourself, and so forth. So, yes, all of those are not contradictory. They seem contradictory, but they're not contradictory because God means reality. And that reality, according to Vedanta, is both personal and impersonal. Impersonal, it means the self, who I am. In my highest reality, I realize that I'm one with the infinite, Brahman itself, one with the Paramatman, one with the infinite spirit beyond time, space, and causation. But that same reality appears as the gods and goddesses. It appears as Parameshwara. It appears as Shiva, Kali, Durga, Bhagavati, Lakshmi, etc. That same reality. And so each of those is not like a separate God. They're different personalities of the one reality. One of the great things in Hinduism was that discovery that the one reality manifests in infinite forms. We have a hymn in our Ramakrishna tradition to the Holy Mother, the wife of Ramakrishna, whom we look on as a manifestation of the Divine Mother. And in that hymn, she's called Ananta Rupini, she who is of infinite forms, she who has infinite forms. And so Sri Ramakrishna is addressed as Sarva Devi Devi Swarupa, the embodiment of all gods and goddesses. So the reality is one, but it appears both as the impersonal reality, which is my own self and which is the self of the whole universe, and also it appears as the gods and goddesses. And so when Swami Vivekananda says unselfishness is God, what he means is that not literally that unselfishness, the word unselfishness is the same as the word God, but what he means is if you become perfectly unselfishness, you'll find that if you become perfectly unselfish, you've become one with God. Because it's only the sense of ego that separates me from God. And if I become perfectly unselfish, I become God. when he says that have faith in yourself. Have faith in yourself because you are God. You're one with God, but we don't know it. And so if I have faith in myself, eventually I can know my oneness with God. Have faith in God. Why? Because God is, and God is the reality. Whether I see God as outside or I see the Atman within, I'm seeing the two manifestations of the same reality. And so the idea is that God is one reality, but with many different ways of looking on that same reality. Okay? Yes.
Pranam Swamiji.
Namaskar.
Without doing my duty, can I Without doing my duty, can I surrender myself to God?
Without doing my duty, can I surrender my... You can surrender yourself to God no matter what. Even if you've even if you've committed a great crime, you can still surrender to God. Surrender to God is always good in every situation. But what you can't do is use surrender to God as an excuse for getting out of a duty. If you failed in a duty, yes, you can still surrender to God and say, God, I failed in my duty. Please help me. But surrender to God has to be sincere. So what I mean is that I can't say, well, there's something I'm supposed to do, I don't want to do it, so I better surrender to God so I can get out of it. Or no, that won't work. But I don't think that's not what you're talking about. So if I have failed in my duty, yes, I can still surrender to God. If I've committed a terrible crime, yes, I can still surrender to God. Whatever happens, I can surrender to God. But my surrender has to be as sincere as I can make it. That's the only qualification. 100% sincerity, if we had 100% sincerity, we would be saints. We wouldn't be sitting here. We would already be illumined souls. But as sincere as I can be, as sincere and as honest as I can be, my surrender to God has to be that. And then I can surrender to God at any time, in any condition. Sri Ramakrishna said that even if you have murdered someone, ultimate crime, you've killed somebody, that even as such a heinous crime you've committed, if you sincerely surrender to God and pray that I will never do this again, you please forgive me, O Lord, and you do it utterly sincerely, then the sin is forgiven. Yes, you may still, if you're caught, you may still have to go to jail, but as far as your relationship to God, that becomes clean if you surrender to God utterly. So surrendering to God is the cure for all maladies, in all situations, at all times.
Pranam Swamiji.
Yes, namaskar.
Swamiji, we are living in a time when materialism is growing at a higher pace, and every day we are running for wealth.
Oh, I think there may be something wrong with it.
In this turbulent times, how can a layman achieve high level of consciousness, or how can he be detached from everything? And do you advocate the fact that everyone should go through the Vedas or the Upanishad to know the roots of the civilization and all?
Okay, well, first on the last part of the question, no, if you're interested, do. It's a very valuable study, a wonderful study, and it'll be a great benefit to you. But it's not that everybody has to study the Vedas and so forth. If you do, that's good. It's a wonderful study, and it will help you know who you are and where you have come from and what Indian civilization was all about and how things have developed. So it's a great study, very valuable. But it's not that everybody has to do that. No, you can't make rules like that. Sri Ramakrishna himself had not studied in that formal sense. He knew many things about the scriptures because he heard from so many great teachers and learned from so many sadhus who used to come through Dakshineshwar. But he hadn't made a formal study of the scriptures, and so no, a rule like that can't be made. So how about materialism and how to overcome the pressures of present day life? Well, that I basically answered in a previous answer to a previous question about basically the same thing, that we want to go in an idealistic direction, but life today is pushing us in a worldly and hedonistic direction. So let me say something else about materialism. That's not a direct answer to your question, but it relates to your question, because this is something that I wanted to say in the talk and there just wasn't time for it, but it ties some things together, and I'll try to make it brief. today is a day of materialism, where all over the world, even in India, the material values have come. And most kids go into a field of study. Why? Because it's the field where they can make the most money. And even if they don't want to, their parents push them to study something because, well, this is where you'll make more money. You want to study that, but there's more money over here, so you go that direction. So that rush for money, the rush for enjoyment has come even to India, and it's washed over the whole world. Starting in the West, it's washed everywhere now. But what is the foundation for materialism? The foundation for materialism, of course, is the belief in matter, that matter is real. But is matter real? No. Matter is completely unreal, and it's easy to show it. Easy to show it in a way that any philosopher of science has to agree. There's no two ways about it. Materialism is the silliest of philosophies, the silliest of philosophies, the most unsupportable of philosophies. Now, a materialist will say that, well, what are you saying, Swamiji? That's nonsense. Matter is the only thing that we know. No, we don't know matter at all. You have never in your life experienced matter. Nobody here has ever in their life experienced matter. It's impossible to experience matter. And a philosopher of science will agree, because they have to agree. Matter is impossible to experience. What do I experience when I see this table? Am I experiencing matter? No. What is happening? The light is coming from this table and entering my eye, taking the scientific analysis, not taking a Vedantic idea of sense perception and all that, taking the scientific analysis. Light is coming, it's registering on the retina, in the sensors in the retina. And that is sending a coded message. It's not sending a picture of this table, it's sending a coded message, a nervous message, through the optic nerve up to the optic center in the brain. And there that message is uncoded, and then it creates what I see. I'm not seeing the table out here. I'm seeing the mind's recreation of that which has come from outside through the eye. But once I know that, then I can doubt the whole process, because that whole process is in my mind also. What I'm seeing is only in my mind. I'm seeing the recreation of my mind of something which has come from outside. And so how do I know that that whole process is actually reliable and trustworthy? When I hear a sound is coming, it's registering on the eardrum, vibrating on the eardrum. That creates a nervous impression. Receptors receive it, encode the message, send it through the nerves to the oral center in the brain, and then the brain creates what I hear. When I feel the table, am I feeling matter? No. There's nerve endings that I feel pressure and feel texture, which is differences in pressure. And that's sent up the nerves up to the tactile center in the brain. And then the brain registers, oh, that's what I'm feeling. I'm not feeling matter. I'm feeling what the brain is telling me my senses had felt. And so it's impossible to experience matter. No one has ever experienced matter and never will experience matter. And so to say that, no, this is the only thing that we know, we don't know it at all. All that we know is consciousness. That's the only thing that we can be sure of. There's nothing else in life we can be sure of, only consciousness. And that the Vedic sages learned long ago. And so again, this is your question was a very practical, simple question. This is a philosophical side answer to what you asked. But since I had already sort of answered that in a previous question, this I thought was a more important thing to say, that the very foundation of materialism is false. The very foundation of materialism is false. And materialism is the silliest of philosophies, the most unsupportable, because what the materialist says is the only reality is something that no one has ever experienced, never can experience, and no philosopher of science can deny that. Even great thinkers, philosophers, and mathematicians like Bertrand Russell said the same thing, that we can't experience matter. We can't experience the external world. We experience that which is the mind's recreation of something we know not what it is.
We are pleased to have such a wonderful audience. Thanks for enthusiasm. Still, due to the time constraint, we have to move on. We have to stop the question and answer session here. But still, if you have any questions, after the session you can approach Swami Rupanandaji in person. So now moving on, I would like to invite our beloved faculty advisor of VSC, Professor C. Balaji, to present memento to Swami Atmarupanandaji as a token of gratitude. Once again, I would like to invite Professor C. Balaji sir to deliver vote of thanks.
Good evening. So, as usual, I make it informal. So, most revered Swami Atmarupananda, Pankaj Maharaj, Swamijis of the order, Brahmacharis, students, ladies and gentlemen. As usual, the students told me just when the program was about to start that I have to deliver the vote of thanks, but that's okay. So it is I'm completely unprepared, but I was just trying to find out what I will speak. But one thing struck me, the relationship between students and professors in IIT-Madras is exactly the same as the relationship between Vivekananda and Ramakrishna. Okay? So there is absolute irreverence. Okay? And one reason is they just don't care about us, but they care only about the truth. Okay? Because they don't care about us, we love them even more. Okay? So I think they are fearless, and that is one of that keeps IIT going. I keep saying that everywhere. So that irreverence is what they should never lose in life. So this is something which we cherish. Which even our previous director, Professor Anand, used to say that this irreverence is what will make them go places in life. Okay? Now I'll get a little serious. So, okay. So we are Swamiji has got a knack of explaining the most advanced things and highest levels of philosophy in such an effortless way that he put a lot of professors to shame. Okay. So as he said yesterday, it is not that easy to be simple. Okay. In fact, Edward de Bono wrote a 400 or 500 page book on simplicity. So he says how things have become so complicated in society. First, we have to decomplexify and we have to make many things simple. Okay, so we learn a lot of, so each of his statements, I think when we put it on our website, it takes a lot of time. It will take a lot of time for us to ponder and see how we can apply it to ourselves. Okay, so coming to the regular things, we thank the Institute, Director IIT-Madras for giving us the freedom and giving us the permission to run VSC and have special classes and so on. In particular, Professor Shiv Kumar, Dean of Students, who agreed to release Central Lecture Theatre today. Yesterday's program was in the ICSR auditorium, but I think there is a book release function today of Professor Swarnalata, and I think so it was already booked, so we are unable to get that. So the success of VSC is largely because the faculty are not involved in VSC. Okay. So I mean it. Imagine this, the VSC is running for 19 years, all the kids stay here only for 4 or 5 years. So after 4 or 5 years, students are continuously changing, but the organization is running there is some unifying thread. One major thread is Pankaj Maharaj. Then we also get a lot of support from the... we also get tremendous support from the Chennai Math. Okay, so they have been constant supporters. And then, of course, our tireless Karma Yogis, our core members, volunteers. Why don't all of you come up? All our core members. Please. So I think they deserve a big hand. Yes, Vijay. Okay. Last but certainly not the least, for the audience, for the wonderful questions. So it is like a regular IIT class where students are waiting to pounce on profs. Okay, I mean, but that idea is, hey, let me try to figure out where we'll try to find out if prof has made a mistake or something, right? So, but one thing we are very clear is if we make a mistake, we accept it. So that's we don't try to defend the indefensible. All right. We must thank the Center for Continuing Education for trying to recording this. This will be put up on our VSC website. Thank you all. Good night.
पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामया, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।